on beating down.
Yeah, and when you do see things like a beatdown mirror, I'm interested in the different halves of Robert Gray's deck. A card like Unsummon might be kind of weak here, whereas a card like Built to Smash that he's playing I would really like in this matchup.
If you can get in front, Built to Smash will do a lot of damage very quickly.
And we are going to start out Johnathan Job a little closer to the ground. He starts on Falcon Wrath Gorger. As the rare from Shadows over Innistrad. A 2-1 for 1. Just showcases how far Jackal Pup has come. Rather than having a drawback, it has the advantage that other vampires in his deck have Madness.
You're not going to see the Madness ability really come into play here. And neither of these players are going to be making Job discard cards.
So just a 2-1 for 1. On Robert's side, he has his own 1-drop in a copy of Soulscar Mage. He's a turn behind despite being on the play because of his 2 copies of Wandering Fumarole. And damage will come in. Johnathan Job playing this is our first new card of the day. It's Earthshaker Kenra. The 2-1 with haste when it enters the battlefield. A creature with power 2 or less can't block this turn. So that and the Gorger's attack for 4.
And that is one of the benefits of Job's deck. His deck is pretty full up on creatures with haste. You have the Kenra there. On 3, he has On-Crop Crasher. He has some Reality Smashers at the top end. A lot of stuff that comes in and attacks for a lot immediately. Gray's deck takes a little bit more setup. He does have haste in Storm Chaser Mage, but that usually only chips in for 1 on the first crack. With Gray behind on life totals, it's a little difficult for him to turn it around. He's going to be relying on drawing a good mix of spells to back up his creatures, getting those Built to Smashes in, getting a lot of reach from his spell base.
Yeah, if this is just a straight damage race, the mono red deck should be able to win that, and we're already seeing that play out here.
Mm-hmm.
Robert will try to hit back. Here's a copy of Storm Chaser Mage. And I think now we're going to see whether or not Robert's going to attack and try to race, or whether he's looking to hold back blockers.
That is the nice thing about Storm Chaser Mage, a 1-3 at its base. It does some pretty good blocking.
Gray Magma Sprays. He chooses to Magma Spray away the Falcon Wrath Gorger, and then swings with both. His concern, I think, what you saw him ask a judge question, was that wording on Soulscar Mage and how that would affect Earthshaker Kenra. So Magma Spray, if you look at Soulscar Mage, when it sources you have dealing damage, do it in form of -1 counters. You see Incendiary Flow taking out a Storm Chaser Mage. The problem here, and why you didn't see him take care of the Kenra, is that normally Magma Spray exiles a 2-1. But in this situation, because Soulscar Mage would make Magma Spray deal -1 counters, he wasn't actually certain whether or not the Kenra would get exiled.
Sure. And the reason you saw Gray get aggressive there, his deck, it does do a lot more work once you have multiple prowess bodies on the battlefield. That makes every time you cast a non-creature spell just worth more and more damage. You know, so there, every time you cast a removal spell, that's +2 damage, but only if you're attacking. So there's a lot of incentive for Gray to try to assume the beatdown role in this matchup.
Yeah, now if you look at the top end of his curve here, he's got in hand a... he has a copy of Bloodwater Entity, but also a copy of Bedlam Reveler. This is the 8-drop. He's still a ways away from it, but if he can cast it, that should be very good in this matchup.
He has that cost reduction mechanic, but just the Magma Spray in the graveyard so far.
So it still costs 7 right now. He needs 3 more mana sources.
Mm-hmm. This card really shines when you have a lot of cantrips going, and his deck does have a fair amount. You know, he has the 2 Crash Through, 4 Expedite, 2 Tormenting Voice. I like being heavy on Tormenting Voice in my Bedlam Reveler deck. Sometimes you just want to discard the Bedlam Reveler, and to be honest, that's what you'd be wanting to do in this situation.
All right, now we see another new card. This is the Bloodwater Entity. It's going to be the play from Robert Gray. I mentioned this before in his Prowess deck. A 2-2 flying with Prowess. Also has the ability when it enters the battlefield, you may put target instant or sorcery from your graveyard on top of your library, and it looks like Robert has chosen to do that. There's a Magma Spray on top of his deck.
It's really nice to be able to get some more value, you know, redraw, control your draw. If you got a good spell in your graveyard, you can cast it again. The downside, that's going to put him further off of his Bedlam Reveler. He's really just on Magma Spray plus the creatures he controls.
And you mentioned just how much haste there was in Job's deck. And we're seeing that again here. His next play, Hazaret the Fervent, and 1 card in hand. So this is online. The 5-4 Indestructible Haste can attack this turn. And you see it's joining in with another Gorger and Kenra.
And while Job technically doesn't have that upside of being able to cast any vampires with Madness, the real upside of the Gorger, it costs 1. Really easy to just empty his hand very quickly.
Yeah.
Hazoret just attacking the first turn he cast it.
You know, technically, if he draws another Gorger, he could use the Hazoret's ability to Madness out a vampire. I mean, it's one of the few ways his deck can do it.
I imagine that doesn't come up too often, but that is pretty nice.
I actually think this one of Hazoret is the only card in his main deck that lets him Madness vampires. He just happens to have the combo this game.
Right. He's already been through 2 Gorgers, though.
Yeah, and I don't know, he doesn't have any other vampires. It would be, if he pulls it off, it'll be the only time it happens this tournament.
Right.
But he hits Robert down to 5. Robert will draw the Magma Spray. The Blue-Red Prowess deck is not going to be able to remove Hazoret from the board.
No. The Soul Scar Mage makes it so that if you get enough burn spells, you can actually just put a bunch of -1/-1 counters on it and actually remove it. The Magma Spray is not quite enough damage. It's only going to get him halfway there.
You see he's going to sit back on some blockers. The hard part is if that's your plan, Hazoret's second ability is going to start mattering here.
Blocking against Hazoret when you're on 5, not really a winning plan.
So Ramunap Ruins is in play. That's the non-basic land you're seeing up at the top for Johnathan. So that plus Hazoret's activated ability gives a lot of reach to this mono-red deck. Johnathan plays a land. Hazoret can attack again.
So Job knows that Gray has redrawn that Magma Spray, so he's kind of weighing his options on combat here. You know, on his face, his creatures, they scale, all 3 of them look pretty good against the base of the 2 powers creatures, but Gray casting that spell in combat, that shakes that up.
Yeah, and Johnathan knows about Magma Spray in Gray's hand, so he should really think of these as a 2/3 and a 3/3.
Right.
And Job will cast his last card, and it's a good one. It's Chandra, Torch of Defiance. It's going to resolve.
Realistically, plussing Chandra, not casting whatever comes up, dealing 2 damage, Gray is going to be dead to that. He won't be able to pressure the Chandra without removing blockers. Job has access to a good amount of reach.
So, I mean, and you even see it here. That Ramunap Ruins in play for Job is 2 more damage. He's got a Hazoret in play. He's going to go a different way. Chandra will remove a blocker, and Job will swing the team. If Robert wants... If we know that Magma Spray is going to happen here. And now that Soul Scar Mage is gone, Earthshaker Kenra is a pretty reasonable target. But he still has to block Hazoret.
The entity has to jump in front there. And this exchange here, you know, Job's not going to lose any creatures because the only blocker is getting in front of the indestructible 5/4. Gets through, should be 2 damage here, and Gray is going to be in the same spot.
Right. And go back to the spot where he doesn't have a way to remove Hazoret. On the next untap, Johnathan can use Ramunap Ruins and then use Hazoret's activated ability, or sorry, use the Chandra. So it's like Ruins, deal 2, Chandra, deal 2. That'll be lethal.
Yep.
So Gorger's exiled. A block in front of Hazoret. Earthshaker Kenra deals 2 more. Gray down to 3. Job will pass. And 1 card's not going to save Gray, but we'll take a look at it. Another Bedlam Reveler certainly not going to do it. Checks graveyard. Do I have 6 instants?
Well, he's cast 2, but it was the same Magma Spray, so
That's
quite
not
there.
going to do it. So game 1 goes to Mono Red and Johnathan Job. In really, Ryan, what looks to me on matchup, on archetype alone, I know you play a lot of these blue-red prowess decks. Typically, how does this blue-red tempo deck do against mono-red?
It really depends on the tools available, but if you just look up and down the curve here, Job looks to have Gray outclassed in the creature department. Also has a decent amount of removal introduced there as well, so he can handle Gray's threats. On paper, I think that Job is going to actually just be significantly advantaged in this matchup. The way that Gray can win is by getting ahead and staying ahead. It's going to be a little bit difficult because his creatures are really outsized at their base.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm noticing is you look at on the curve, just the power, the stats on each creature. Like on 2 mana, Robert Gray gets Storm Chaser Mage, but Earthshaker Kenra from Job just looks better there.
Yeah, it attacks for more immediately. I don't think you're going to see too much in the way of eternalizing the Kenra.
Yeah.
But just the 2-power haste straight away just allowed Job in that game to get ahead immediately.
Yeah, and Hazaret looked great from Job. One thing that's interesting about his deck, he actually does have Eldrazi as well. 3 copies of Thought-Knot Seer and 2 copies of Reality Smasher. We'll get to that in a second. Looking at the sideboards, though, let's start there. A lot of times in these red mirrors, we'll see players try to go a bit bigger out of the sideboard. I don't want to start with Robert Gray. 3 copies of Fevered Visions, 3 copies of Chandra's Defeat. Now, that's a cycle we're going to see a lot of in sideboards today. I'll talk about that in a sec. 2 Dispels, 2 Negates, 2 Censors, so 6 counter spells, a By Force, a 3rd Tormenting Voice, and then a copy of Jace's Defeat. So Chandra's Defeat, this is the cycle of uncommons that are same color hate cards. That to me seems great.
And not only is Job flush with red creatures, he also has some Chandra Planeswalkers, so Gray might be able to do the looting upside on the Chandra's Defeat. That one's a slam dunk. The counter spells are kind of just disjointed. You don't know how good Dispel and Negate are. You did see Job casting a lot of creatures, so you probably want to avoid those entirely. On the play, you can use Censor to press your advantage, and it does look like Gray has to get ahead and stay ahead in this matchup. So this could very well be a Censor matchup, especially if you suspect that Job is going to be casting those Eldrazi. You did see the Colorless Source in Game 1, and this is a deck that has been showing up in some variation on Magic Online.
All right, so we know he has extra kill spells. But as far as larger threats, it doesn't have that. Though I could see a removal-heavy strategy. I would love to see Robert get rid of these built-to-smashes and unsummons in this matchup.
Yep, keeping Job off the battlefield is really going to be a huge benefit for Gray.
And now on Johnathan's side, he's got 2 copies of Hanvir Garrison, 2 Sweltering Suns. I'm going to get to the new cards in a second, skipping over those. 2 Invigorated Rampage. He's got 2 a Glorybringer, an Incendiary Flow, a Thought-Knot Seer, a Reality Smasher. Those are the 4th and 3rd copies of those. A 2nd Chandra, a 2nd Hazaret, and the 4th Magma Spray. So most of his sideboard is extra copies of the same cards. He also has 2 copies of the card Abrade. That's a new card from the set. It's a Shatter variant.
Right. The card is either just Shatter, or you can deal 3 damage to a creature. And that's going to work out really well here. It's going to kill basically all of Gray's creatures shy of the Bedlam Revelers. And he hasn't even seen those, so that should be solid here. The Magma Spray as well. And Thought-Knot Seer is really good when your opponent is stuck on red base removal. I
almost want to see Johnathan just go bigger. I loved Hazaret that game. I love the Thought-Knot Seer. If he does that plan, Abrades, Chandra, the extra Hazaret, the extra Thought-Knot, that should work out really well against an opponent who's trying to Magma Spray him off the table.
Yeah, completely agree.
We're going to get ready for a second game here. Now, we are going to be broadcasting all weekend here on the SCG Tour, and we have our Twitch subscription program. So you can join us in the feature match area just by subscribing to us over on twitch.tv/SCG Tour. You get a custom emoticons and badge. It's only $4.99 a month, and also you get to decide the quarterfinals. That means when we go to our elimination rounds tomorrow, you get to choose the decks and players that you want to see here on camera.
Hopefully we'll see a sweet mix this weekend.
Well, if round 1's any indicator, as far as just, you talked about how this is the biggest standard gets. Sometimes we run into the problem where the cards that are already in standard are so good that once you add, this is the 8th set to standard. Mm-hmm. Once you add an 8th set, you start looking at it and you say, well, the numbers would work out that you'd expect only about 10% of the cards to be new, a little over. It looks to be much higher. On power comparison, the new set looks to be outperforming a lot of the older ones.
There is a lot to like in the new set for sure.
So Gray on the play again, though he, for the second game, has to really take turn 1 to play a Wandering Fumarole, and Job will start with Falconwrath Gorger.
Looks like Gray has access to Magma Spray. He's going to wait to see if maybe he's going to get an Earthshaker Kenra with that.
Yeah, he could have. He has Magma Spray and Incendiary Flow. He thought about flowing on turn 2 at Sorcerer Speed. It looks like he'll actually just take 2 off the Gorger, like he's planning to save his removal for some more meaningful creatures.
Yeah, 2-1, not the scariest thing in the world.
Soulscar Mage from Joe, but that will hit an end of turn Magma Spray.
And those two creatures of pretty comparable quality. You can have some big Soul Scar Mage turns, though.
And here's going to be Bloodwater Entity putting the Magma Spray back on top. Now, this idea of just of Magma Spraying everything, putting Magma Sprays on top, I really do like that out of Robert's deck.
Well, it's good against half of Job's deck.
Right, until we get to the second plan.
And if this were just a straight kind of prowess mirror,
it'd be very good.
Yeah, this would look truly excellent. But we'll see if Job actually gets to these Eldrazi. If he starts casting Hazaret, starts casting Chandra Torch of Defiance. And
Job, Earthshaker Kenra will clear away the blockers and put Robert down to 14. Though there's a Magma Spray with that Kenra's name on it, and Gray drew it. I do think the Bloodwater Entity, both games in Robert's deck, has been interesting. Last game we saw him have Bedlam Revelers in hand. You see Gorger's Magma sprayed away. And this game he has an Enigma Drake in hand. There's some fighting, internal fighting going on in his list. Yeah,
Bloodwater Entity does not really play ball with several of the cards in the deck. It is a prowess threat, so you do like that. You want to have a high threshold of that. 3 mana for a 2/2 flyer at his base, though. Not terribly exciting. So now with that prowess trigger, he's thinking if he wants to bash for 3.
He'll swing in and now play Enigma Drake. As a 4/1, Enigma Drake, or 1/4. Remember, that's a star 4. Star is the number of instants and sorceries in Gray's graveyard. So that threat, as a 1/4 flyer for 3, it's a pretty reasonable size. That card, though, can be very efficient in the late game.
Well, it does reasonable blocking in most situations. Job does have access to more Kenras, some on-crop crashers if he cares about that.
And here's what I love, Thought-Knot Seer out of Johnathan Job. And we talked about maybe the best upgrade for the mono-red deck was the mana. That card, Ramunap Ruins, you see it on the top of Jonathan's pile there. This new cycle of deserts, they all can tap for colorless mana. So suddenly this inclusion of these Eldrazi is very free in the mono-red deck. And you see Thought-Knot Seer is going to take away Incendiary Flow. And Ryan, looking at this, the blue-red deck actually is going to have some trouble removing a Thought-Knot Seer from the board.
Well, especially just left with Expedite in hand. You can try to set up a situation where you're able to double block, cast a spell in combat. That's not terribly exciting. Over time, Job will commit more and more to the battlefield.
Tormenting Voice discarding Expedite for Robert Gray. And one of the things I actually wanted to see here, you see him draws another Expedite and a Built to Smash. Hold on. We need to start counting some damage.
It's a little bit awkward that Gray did tap Mountain.
Yeah, he probably should have tapped off that island. Now he can't play both cards.
But Built to Smash does let him punch through for a good amount of damage. Notably, his 2 creatures fly, so they're not going to be entering combat with Thought-Knot Seer as a blocker.
I was going to say, I was wondering if he could just, straight win a race here. So now you have a 3/4 Drake. Because of prowess, both creatures are 3s.
I believe that if he were able to cast both spells, he'd get up to 15 damage on this turn.
So Build to Smash actually is target attacking creature, so he has to time it a little differently here. He seems trying to play it pre-combat. It's fine. It's still going to work. The judge backs him up.
Job's tapped out. There's not going to be any complications with that.
Yeah, just be like, wait, attack first, then smash your guy. So this is a lot of damage. So we start with a 2/2 flyer. It's prowess twice. It's pumped up to 7. Then we look at Enigma Drake. That's pumped up to 4. This is 11 damage.
So now Job actually is going to want some removal spells. He can only crack back for 6, even if he commits Reality Smasher on top. That's only 11.
And Robert Gray has lethal in the air on the following turn already. The Drake's a 4/4. The Flyer's a 2/2, even with an empty hand. And here's a Glory Bringer from Johnathan Job. Swing, exert, kill Enigma Drake.
That's going to make this a much taller order.
So Gray down to 4. Now, not that much. Untapped land should do it here. You see, he has the Wandering Fumarole.
Yeah, Job really should have hung back the Kenra here.
Well, no, I guess it flies. Oh, yeah, the Kenra.
For the Fumarole.
Yeah, we'll see. So Gray... He's got Johnathan at 6.
I believe that Gray peeled Island as well.
There's the untapped land. Yeah, Wandering Fumarole swinging on in. That's exactly 6. He said, flip it. Yeah, flip it to a 4-1. Okay, and we're going to 3. Robert Gray. I was thinking he was going to go for a removal spell plan faux sideboard. And you can see it on Jonathan's face. He missed it. He points to the top of his head. It's like, man, that was the Kenra.
Right.
I thought Robert was going to try to be a control deck here. Sit back, recur magma sprays. But look at that turning speed.
He does have the controlling elements. He was casting Magma Spray. He was aggressively getting it back with his Bloodwater entity. But at the end of the day, he has identified that he needs to get ahead and stay ahead. Built to Smash is his best way to close a game quickly, and he needs to do just that.
Well, there's this really interesting window, right? So on turns 1 and 2, and maybe even 3, Jonathan's attacking. And then we have this window of turns 3 and 4, where it's Robert's turn. And then if we get to maybe turns 6 and 5 and above, Jonathan's ahead again because he has the Glorybringers and Thought Knots. So this really small window, which Robert played into right there, where he gets to be the attacker.
Something troublesome, though. Game 3 will be the first game where Job is on the play.
Yeah, and I mean, Robert's been behind on tempo both games, and he was on the play for both of them. Yeah, you're right. I mean, if Johnathan keeps a good 7, it's going to be tough for Robert to beat it.
Right.
But going to a third game is what we're going to do. You see Johnathan looking back at the sideboard. Now, is there anything that would make you want to play differently from Jonathan's side based on what you just saw happen? He hadn't seen Built to Smash, Expedite, any of those cards game 1.
You can suspect that a lot of that's going to be in the deck. There's nothing that really happened in the game that's going to cause me to change my strategy per se, unless for some reason a Braid was still in Job's sideboard. The card I'd be looking at on the play versus on the draw is Handweir Garrison. When you're able to leverage that card aggressively, it's very powerful.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about a Braid. If you look at that game, if Johnathan had another Chandra or a Braid or just some way to kill a creature, he'd have been fine.
Right.
It was really that Robert landed a second flyer that made things troublesome.
Yeah, well, the second prowess creature is just worth so much damage. In particular, the Enigma Drake, it's +2 for every instant and sorcery because it's checking them in the graveyard as well.
Now, Ryan, another card, and I'm looking at this out of the Blue-Red Prowess deck. I was hoping to see, and we still might see, there's been some rumblings about the Blue-Red Thermo Alchemist deck. If you remember that from about a year ago. First of all, you get the card Thermo Alchemist, and now we also have another tool for those decks coming out of the new format. What I was asking is, what do you do you think we might see any of that this weekend?
So I'm really curious to see the deck that Jim Davis wrote about in action. I think that Riddle form is the big find from the new set for that. It's just blue and 1. If you cast a non-creature spell, it's a 3/3 flyer.
Yeah.
And that's not asking very much to just chip in for 3 every time. And Jim was writing about that as really the best upgrade to this deck. And I think there's a lot to like about that card. It also has the ability to scry if you get a little bit flooded, which these decks can do. And it's a really big downside for the Prowess deck if you do get flooded.
Yeah. But so we have Riddle form. Cards like Firebrand Archer or Thermo Alchemist. I'm surprised that we're seeing a 4 Expedite deck out of Robert Gray that's not playing any of those.
Yeah, it is a little bit curious. He's trying out some fancier stunts. Got the Bloodwater entity.
All right, so once again, Robert's turn 1 is just a Wandering Fumarole. A bit of a reprieve from him, though, from Joe, but no play on the first turn. And now plays a copy of Sun-Scorched Desert. This one's not actually new. It was from Amonkhet.
Newly seeing play.
Yeah.
Speaking of not new, but fresh to the camera.
Ragavan, Kauri Zev, the Skyship Raider. Haven't dusted off my monkey tokens in a while.
Yeah, hopefully we have some down in the feature match area.
3/1, 1/3 First Strike Menace.
That was curious there.
And he's going to misread the card. He goes for a Magma Spray on Kauri Zev.
Played it confidently.
Yeah,
Joe believed that it
too.
died.
I was like, wait, that doesn't work. So he'll swing. He'll get a Ragavan. Ooh. I mean, I'm going to give Robert a pass on this one. Mono Red playing a 1/3 for 2 is weird.
It is peculiar.
I just assume Magma Spray kills all the red 2-drops. Because it usually does.
Right.
Double Soulscar Mage from Job. Okay, now Robert wishing, of course, he has the Magma Spray back. And no third land for Robert. He's got 2 Incendiary Flows, a Built to Smash, an Enigma Drake, a Chandra's Defeat, it looks like. The interesting thing, so Storm Chaser Mage, he's got a Tormenting Voice, which he'd really like to cast, but if he misses a land off this,
the downside is so huge.
He's going, it's so much pain. So here's Built to Smash, Tormenting Voice. Draw, misses the land.
And that's the thing about the Prowess deck, is it has a very low mana curve, but it really needs to get up to 4 mana. When you have all these 2 mana spells, you need to be casting 2 in a turn. They're just so low impact relative to everything else. And Job's deck is low to the ground as well, but he really needs to be casting 2 removal spells. He's behind on the board.
Here comes the damage. By that I didn't mean the second Sunscorched Desert, but there it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from Johnathan. Gray down to 10. And here's Hazoret. We saw that card just be incredible in our first game.
Yeah, Job still had 2 cards in hand. Couldn't cast it this turn. Will be able to next turn if he so chooses.
Yeah, and what we saw in the first game again is that Robert can't actually remove it. His best way to win is to race it, but I just don't know how he wins a race from this board.
He's way too far behind at this point. Not to mention how low his life total is.
Yeah, Soulscar Mage and a pass. I believe 2 copies of Chandra's Defeat in hand, so he'll get to kill plenty of cards, but not that Hazoret.
And another Sunscorched Desert. For
So
whatever
good.
that's worth.
He's playing 4.
He's now cast a free Lava Spike.
All right, Chandra's Defeat. Number 1.
Would that you could kill Hazoret with that one. Alas, it's not Hazoret's defeat.
Though Hazoret was defeated in the set, all the gods. The storyline, I got read a bit on this one. This is a really bleak future for the plane of Amonkhet.
You mean to tell me that Hour of Devastation isn't...
They were devastated
it's not
by
a
the events of this.
It's not a Morning Tide analog?
No. The Gatewatch lost a fight to Nicol Bolas. All the gods were killed. Another Soulscar Mage. Dead. Another one blocked. Robert, though, taking 5, goes to 2. Hazoret's got a really good activated ability for this sort of situation.
Yep.
Johnathan says pass.
Can't prevent Job from putting a card in his hand. He already has one.
Another Chandra's Defeat. Just checking the text on that and make sure it can't kill Hazoret.
No Nimble Obstructionist in Gray's deck.
Wait, hold on. Soulscar Mage. Soulscar Mage can kill Hazoret.
If he's got a couple burn spells, he can take it down.
He might... Because it deals damage and -1 counters.
He has 2 Incendiary Flows, but still on 3 lands.
Well, just 1 Chandra's Defeat should do it. Enigma Drake and go, right?
That is a combo.
Chandra's Defeat would have actually killed the Hazoret here. But Robert misses it, and the game's going to go to Johnathan.
And honestly, that's an easy one to miss. This is week 1 with a new format. And it looks like Job is explaining that right away now.
Yeah, Robert could have won that game.
Could have been in it. You know, Job's still at 20. He was very far behind.
Yeah, but Job's last card was a mountain, though. If you Chandra's Defeat the god, you're right. He's a ways behind.